Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Silver Sunday, hosted by Bob Kalberg.
Oh my God. Okay. Hi, everybody. Roland and Curtis are busy tonight. It's Valentine's, so we have a kind of a short crew. I know. and and we're going to go around right now and introduce ourselves. So I'm going to start up here with Aaron.
I am the one right next to her. Yeah, I am the penciler on Fire Rush, which I think the second issue is coming out soon, and I have just started design stuff on a new comic I'm doing for Silverline that I'm pretty excited about. So just started doing design wise, which means my brain is half here, half there tonight, because I'm always percolating stuff in my back of my head. Design stuff sometimes. This flusters me. And then I do my own comic book. So I'll be doing 2 comic books at the same time. Well, wish me luck on this one, which is called Goblins, which is on Webtoons.
So your brain's running on several tracks.
Yes, all at once.
Just wait till it jumps the track, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, that it is.
All right, Tim.
I thought that was normal.
Yeah, it is for me.
It is.
I am Tim TK. I'm the associate editor at Silverline, and I help manage our craft blog series. I'm also the writer/creator on Wolf Hunter, and I am also a frequent streamer at the Twitch channel Agro Bacon. And I've been told last week that I'm the unofficial voice of Silverline thanks to my ability to scream.
How about you, John?
This is the wrong week for all that. I'm John Martin. I am the inker on Fire Rush and on Wolf Hunter. That one that he says he wrote. Yeah.
Yes.
Things
look so good.
I've also done work for Upper Deck Dynamite. I guess you could say Upper Deck Marvel because it was for Marvel, but for Upper Deck. And I'm kind of currently trying to hash out a cover real quick for Fire Rush number 2.
Okay. How about you, Roberta?
Hi, I'm Roberta Conroy. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm a former colorist at Malibu Comics in the 90s, and currently I am working on Silverline titles, the Silverline Team Up, Champion and Miss Fury, and the Cat and Mouse book.
Yay! And I am Barbara Kjellberg. I am tonight's hostess, and this is my first time hostessing, so if I screw up, please don't tease me. I am also a CFO for SilverlineComics, inker on Cat and Mouse, creator, inker, and colorist, and co-writer on Divinity. And I'm also coloring Sirens, which is an older book that we're going to be renewing. So tonight's topic, because it's Valentine's Day, we're going to do a show on romance in comics. And can anybody tell me who really brought romance comics into the forefront? Who really made a splash with it?
You're talking about like back in the
day. A little bit of history here.
Little 40s and 50s.
Who introduced it as a big mainstream seller?
Wasn't it Marvel Comics?
So far, you're good.
Yeah, I thought it was because then Marvel went to superheroes. I'm not gonna. Is it Stan Lee?
Close. Shortly after World War II, the superhero comics kind of fell out of favor because everybody was like so done with them because the war was over and everybody was looking for something new. And so comics kind of started to fall off. So DC and Marvel were looking to bring other genres in to try to prop up failing sales. So they started like sci-fi and horror and westerns.
Yeah, westerns are big.
Crime. And Joe Simon and Jack Kirby actually.
I was gonna say Jack Kirby.
Yep, they brought in their flagship romance comic, Young Romance, and it took off like a rocket. because people were, after the war, they were all happy and, wanted a little excitement, and that romances seemed to do it.
Yeah.
But then around the early 70s, free love and everything like that, and this was, the comics code was in effect, so you had to maintain a very decorum type of writing in comics, and
Those squares.
yeah, it fell off because nobody was interested in the 50s type of
Right.
romance,
They had to be very
circumspect.
family
Mhm.
friendly, I guess you
Yes.
could say, romance. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny because most people think American comics started or got big because of superhero comics, and that's not the case.
No.
I mean, there was like crime, romance.
Mhm.
Those that really made it.
Well,
Superheroes were a niche to
I mean,
comics
DC
specifically.
was really
Yeah.
just Detective Comics. Like
Yeah.
Batman took in to
yeah,
be heard of that, but it was a whole slew of hard-boiled detective.
Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, superheroes were big during World War II because we needed our heroes,
Hmm.
Right.
and it was all patriotism and everything like that. But after the war was over, people didn't want to think about it anymore. They wanted something new and different, and there was a lot of
Yeah.
niches to fill.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the Old West comics. I think Old West comics are almost on par with romance comics as far as sales.
Hmm.
I think they were the other one that were really, really big.
What was one
Because
of the?
romance comics were really huge. And people say, like, were they big? It's like, yeah, they were big
They
until they
were
fell out of
very big
favor. Yeah.
until the
Which is
sexual
true.
revolution.
Mm.
Yeah. And what you think with today now, with the absence of the Comics Code Authority, I mean, we gave that up, what now, 6, 7 years ago? Has it been longer that we
S-
finally got rid of the Comics Code?
Something like that, but it seems like longer than that we were really pushing the envelope. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
we were doing it in the 90s.
yeah. If you look
Yeah.
at after the '98 reboot, when Marvel kind of had to rebrand themselves, like, hey, what if murder was just a regular occurrence?
or even the outfits. I mean,
Yeah.
they're really pushing the envelopes. Basically, two band-aids and a cork.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. The Corker's taped
Hey,
on.
that's a good idea. Wait, what? I found that there's a new costume idea. Some electrical tape.
believe it or not, I didn't come up with that saying. My father used to say that. She's wearing basically nothing but two band-aids and a cork. Um, but I think
Um,
that romance has always been a really big part of
Hmm.
comics, even though we kind of got away from romance comics. Speaking of which, I
Yeah.
have done one. Paul Kupperberg has recently brought back romance comics, and I've done some of that.
Strange enough, romance comics are big, just the manga. I think it's
Mm.
Yaoi is the
Yes.
Yeah.
romance comics. So the demand is there. American comics just either haven't been able to nail it, or they haven't really taken advantage
I
of it.
think
But
it's
if you go to
because
the manga side, it's
yeah,
huge.
I think because we've kind of opened up the whatever trade barriers were there, and the manga market is so much bigger in America now
Yeah,
that it's been more profitable for businesses to kind of just co-op and get distribution deals with Japanese printers, and just they'll have distribution in the United States.
right.
So like I mean, like all of the big four have some sort of manga partner, and then other indies too as well.
Yeah,
Do you do you
yeah.
think do you think romance in comics is more prevalent outside of the United States?
I think so.
It
I
could be,
think
yeah.
even European stuff, even if you look at European like fantasy
Hmm.
comics, there's usually a romance in the story. I mean, most American comics, even in the superhero and adventure stories, there's hardly any romance. I'm not saying there's none.
Yeah,
There is
there's
some.
yeah, there's something in there that's used more as like the B or C story, but
Yeah,
I mean,
Plot line?
yeah, we can get into the whole why superheroes blew back up and all the different economic crises that led to that resurgence. But
right.
other countries, I feel like it serves more as an A story to have the romance, and then any sort of fantastical elements take the background to that.
Yeah, I do too. Well, I mean, look at Star Wars, the most,
Yeah.
romance, Han Solo and Princess Leia. I mean, and is there a need for romance comics? Well, Strangers in Paradise,
Mm.
that was huge. And I think ElfQuest was big because of the romance. I mean, if you take the romance out of ElfQuest, I mean, there's still a quest there, still, but that was a huge
Hmm.
component of that story. So I think romance is still in demand. Either American comics are not willing to pull the plug, or they don't really know what to do. But every time I've seen romance stories that are well written come in, they become popular. I mean, at least I read them.
What's your favorite romantic storyline, Roberta?
Oh, well, I always followed Elektra and Daredevil because
Oh
they're
yeah.
crazy.
Iconic couple.
Yeah, iconic. I mean, she dies. He's crazy. They're on, they're off. I think
Well,
one of the major threads of interest in that storyline was just the push and the pull of those two.
Yeah.
and of course, I think the all-time first couple of comics would have to be Clark Kent and Lois Lane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
So, do you guys think, when did they jump the shark in that romance?
You mean when did they get rid of it or whatever you mean?
Well, when do you think that whole storyline ever jumped the shark? All right, let's put it this way. You know what UST is, right? Unresolved sexual tension, or the
Mhm.
moonlighting
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
Don't you agree that it's more interesting in comics to have this long buildup of unresolved sexual tension, and then once the guy gets the girl, a lot of people lose interest. They think it's jumped the shark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TV shows a classic for
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
yeah,
You
that's
know.
true.
But comics, it's like you're gonna have to pull the trigger eventually. And that's a fine line because it's like, how long do you push that tension before or people just get tired of it? And like, okay, we
Yeah.
don't care.
I think, well, we kind of talked about that a little bit on the Wednesday show, but I think the main issue we had with it was actually that they let Lois's character stagnate. She can
Mhm.
only show up to the scoop so many times and have Superman rescue her so many times before that storyline happens, and then after they get together, and that storyline continues to happen, and it
Yeah.
took a while for Lois to have any sort of agency. So I think it was always fun to have UST, and then at some point you switch out writers or whatever, and they say to make a change and resolve that. There needs to be some sort of other character development to have the love interest also be as interesting to develop that, to warrant that extra time on page.
Yeah.
Also,
It's
Tommy Kasisi say hi, and Tommy's calling me a traitor.
Yeah, but like a day trader, not like a trader.
Yeah, he called me
like,
traitor. Yeah,
yeah.
Wednesdays.
That's what he meant.
I mean that game stonk.
Games. You know, it's funny. I remember. I think it might have been Joe Quesada was doing an interview about Spider-Man when they did the New Day. I think it's New Day or something, where they undid his marriage to Mary Jane.
Yeah.
And it was something like, because when he finally married Mary Jane, like the interest lowered or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so they split it up again to add that won't they get back together. You know, it's a question. Can romance stories can they work in an ongoing serialized, storytelling like comics? I think they can, but most romance stories, I mean, you want to see the ending. I mean, does he get with the girl or not? And then that ends. I mean, because like you said, once somebody gets together in a serialized comic, what else can you really do with that except break them up again?
Right.
And yet there are exceptions, because from the very beginning, Reed Richards and was always together with
Sue Storm.
Sue Storm.
Yeah.
You know, and they weren't married at the beginning, but they have been married for so long. They're like the quintessential married couple in comics, and they work.
Yeah.
But then you get somebody that's really popular, and I think half the fun is the person they're romancing doesn't know that they have a secret identity.
Yeah. I think also the Fantastic Four, I think also, I mean, since they're more of a family unit, do you think the family, I mean, at the different, not so much like, I think there's romantic love, but more like family love. And sometimes, like, when people think of Fantastic Four, like, we're Reed Richards and them are married because it's a family, it's that family aspect. And I wonder if you take away the family aspect and put it back in the romantic, then you eventually have to break them up again. Like, people, like, well, of course you want them to be together. They're a family.
Yeah.
But if a couple's together romantically, then how do you want some sort of drama or something.
Yeah. Not to bring back to Marvel, because we did that a ton on Wednesday, but Cassisi in chat says Jean Grey and Wolverine.
Yeah.
I prefer Wolverine and Storm over Wolverine and Jean Grey because it just seemed like more natural.
Yeah.
I quit reading the X-Men after Claremont ended a while after that. So didn't Scott get together with like Emma Frost for a while?
Yes, he. So I actually I read a bit of Claremont, but I really got into X Men with Lobdell and Brubaker, which is heresy
Okay,
for some
yeah.
people. But um, uh, the relationship with Jean Grey, which has been brought back, kind of like what Barbara's saying, I think they do a really good job of having the stagnation be broken once they pull the trigger and
Hmm.
making them a couple, because Jean Grey either has the potential of going full nuclear if the Phoenix Force ever comes back to Earth, or
Yeah.
in the current setup, they give him that family dynamic because Cable is back and he's younger, timeline, whatever. But they have a full family dynamic where it's the Summers family, and it's, well, they need to stay together because they have this family to take care of in addition to superhero
Yeah.
duties.
But if you
I've been
do, but if you look online, like Scott Summers and Emma Frost is one of the most hated couples out there.
Mhm.
I think they're just yeah.
I love it because it doesn't make sense, but it does, because the whole thing was Emma's like, I'm borderline evil, so if you go above me, you're going too far, Scott.
Yeah. I just know they got together. Like I said, I never read much of the romance.
Mhm.
And I just took it as like that's the opposite effect of like the straight guy and he likes the bad girl.
Yeah,
That the opposites attract. That's what I took the idea. But I always liked the Colossus and Kitty Pryde romance, which is rarely
they're
touched
so,
upon in the
yeah, they're
comics.
great.
Yeah,
That
they kind of touch on them here and there, but not really. They're kind of in the
Well, there
background.
was. I mean, how old was Colossus when he met Kitty?
Kitty was like a teenager. Colossus, I would
yeah,
say
that was
mid-20s.
it's right after him and Ileana essentially escaped the circus. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it was Colossus liked the idea of possibly corrupting a minor, maybe. I don't know.
no,
She was young. She was supposed to be
Yeah,
like
she was young. She
yeah,
was like
yeah,
13 or 14.
yeah. And they kind of go on and on. It's funny. I've been reading some new. I haven't read X-Men comics in years. I'm reading Hickman's
oh yeah, yeah.
run, and this thing. I mean, I like it, and the one thing that's weird though, it's still weird to see the characters the same age. Like I read one with Kitty Pryde. It's like she's still the same
Well,
age, and they did
that's
talk about.
No,
And
she's
that's
not.
comics. That's just comics for you.
yeah.
But it still seems weird when it's like, well, now what's our future going to be like? And I'm thinking back of all the stories I've read on her, and she's like, she's had what 10, 20 years worth of stories.
I think
And she
they've
still
aged
looks
her.
that young.
I think they've aged Kitty Pryde some.
A little
So,
bit,
yeah,
yeah. I think she just has
Yeah,
a young
she's
look
an
to her.
adult now. She's an
Yeah,
adult
she's
now.
been an adult for a while, but yeah, when Colossus came to the United States, he was like 18 or 19, and essentially he's supposed to be like a senior in high school, and then
Was that what it is? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Did you guys ever talk about the Rogue Gambit romance that's been on and off? They've been doing that for years. I think they've been.
I just
They
appreciate
hooked
how
up
like
finally.
the one note Barb gave us at the start was, you guys talked a lot about Marvel, and here we are.
Well,
Yeah.
the only
All right,
ones
so
I know,
Superman
like,
and Wonder
I
like
Woman.
I
know,
said,
and I didn't say we couldn't talk about
Sure.
Marvel. I
yeah,
just said
but-
I wanted to cover other aspects
Yes,
besides Marvel.
it's just I've made it very jokingly apparent that X-Men is my second religion to Star Wars.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I've read the X-Men for years. The only other now I have lots of romance and comics, but I don't know if you guys. I mean, you guys don't read Appleseed, do you? Rebecca,
I
read
watched
No,
it.
but talk about it.
talk
Go
Yeah.
ahead and
about
talk about it.
Dune and Barrios, and I never could say his last name right. Barrios.
Yeah, I watched the adaptation.
He's a cyborg, and they've had a romance going. And from what I've gathered from the books, I think he has all his functioning organs. But she's the point man, and I think he's the backup
Yeah.
military wise. And they've been on and off forever.
So
but
he's fully functional.
he was human. Because you wondered that because he was actually in World War III, and he was actually hurt, and they rebuilt him. So he's all his internal organs and brains, but he's pretty much like a cyborg. But he's not metal. His skin is not metal. It's like a sort of rubber, sort of like
Test
almost
tubey.
hot to touch. Yeah, it's not supposed. If you see him, so he actually can eat and stuff. But you do wonder if all of his organs are. And I think they did say that he is functional, so they can consummate a romance, not just have the romance there, which is kind of a big deal
a
sometimes.
bummer.
I mean, what was the thing? Even in war movies, all the guys always worry about losing their reproductive organs because, I mean, you want to have kids. I mean, that could take away your ability to have kids. So yeah.
I never. What?
I mean,
All right. How?
I must
Go
be
ahead.
watching the wrong war movies.
You never seen that, like in Band of Brothers and stuff?
No.
yeah.
Did you ever seen the scene where he gets shot and he's all like, and one guy's like checking him over. And he's like, "Don't worry." He like tears off his pants, like, "Don't worry, it's all intact." And the guy's like, "Okay, thank you." Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I must have missed that.
Definitely. Yeah, that was always a worry. But that's one of the romance I grew up with, is Dune and Barrios. Yeah, but he quit this. It was supposed to be 10 volumes long, but he got to half the volume 5 and he quit. He didn't do it anymore.
How about Bone?
What?
How about Bone?
Bone. Unrequited love between Bone and
And a human.
Oh yeah.
Cross species there. Bone.
I think she should have gone for it. I mean, why not?
It's an interdimensional relationship. Let's call it that.
Well, it was so funny because they never. I always thought it was so weird that they put like humans in there, and the phone bones looked like cartoon characters. Like they kind of were.
It's
like,
perfectly normal.
Yeah, and they didn't have. I mean, Phone Bone was actually, he didn't wear any clothes, but then like Phony Bone wore a shirt, and then like I think Smiley Bone wore a vest, and that was it. And they never showed any female Bones, so I had no idea if they even had female versions of Bones. I don't think he ever
They're
mentioned.
like dwarves.
Yeah. And he never showed Boneville too. He said like, "They said you ever going to?" And he's like, "No, it'll never be as impressive as the people think it is. So I'm never going to show it." He just talked about it. But what was it? Was Thorn, right? Wasn't that
Thorn?
Yeah. So, and
And
they got
he was Thorn.
Oh God, that was a great romance. Didn't she end up meeting like a prince or something that she actually? It's been a while since I've read Bone in a while. I have like one of the actual hardbacks that was like only 1,000 or made. It's my little, so I don't read it that much. I need to buy another version, so I keep that safe.
There's also the quintessential triangle of Archie and Betty and Veronica.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was part of the thing that was so fun about that, was that he couldn't make up his mind. You know, so there was always these, and the weird thing was Betty and Veronica palled around. They were friends, and like they're all in love with the same guy. You know, it's weird.
Yeah.
They're both in love with the same guy, and he can't make up his mind. I think I would have been a little pissed off at myself, but
I did read a comic called Sunstone that was pretty good romance wise, little BDSM, but it was a romance comic. First, I think it did 2 volumes. Or the first
it's an Image comic.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy who does it. He's done a lot of Marvel stuff now. The artist who does it, I can't remember his name.
I can't pronounce it, so don't.
Yeah. I'm actually going through and thinking about, because I actually do read a lot of comics that have romance in them, and I read a lot of non. I think.
All right, let me throw out some couples, and everybody gets to comment on them. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
What's your impression of Clark Kent and Lois Lane?
I prefer Clark Kent and Wonder Woman.
See, now that's a really hated couple.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because it actually makes more sense.
Yeah.
How about you, Roberta?
Well, I think I wish she could do more. I think like you were alluding to, that there was kind of a played outness to the amount of storyline that they could give her with the scenario of what she's interested in.
She's the continual damsel in distress.
I would like to have seen her decide to have a little bit of change in her life, to be a couple with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So I think I was disappointed in that couple.
So would you have preferred Clark and Wonder Woman, or Superman and Wonder Woman?
I don't know. Maybe I just wish she was a little bit more interesting.
I think I have the same problem as Roberta's. I wish I get Lois. I just wish she had a little more agency.
Yeah.
I just wish Lois did more other than need to be rescued. And
yeah, she's a little one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Which is why Wonder Woman works so much better in that in having a relationship with the most powerful man in DC, because then she's not that thing he has to worry about.
Mm.
Yeah.
She's that one who's actually got his back, which is why when you look at her, how she's got his back in the Injustice universe or alternate reality of the things, they're pretty badass.
Do you ever think it would have been interesting if they would have had a Kryptonian female survivor that he got with? Would that have been something you guys would be on board with? That way they're technically matched.
If she maybe
Nah.
if she was doing her own thing, maybe.
Because I think like all the other Kryptonians on Earth, aren't they all related to his Superman in some way or another?
I think he's the only one that has a tie to Earth. So if you had
Yeah.
someone that's Kryptonian, they might want to do something else.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, next one. Black Canary and Green Arrow.
Yeah.
Black Canary's wasting her time.
And why's that?
It's Green Arrow.
We had some strong
He's a leprechaun Hawkeye.
He's a leprechaun Hawkeye. He's actually the straight up Errol Flynn version of the Archers.
Yeah.
He's a wannabe Robin Hood.
He is Robin Hood.
So who should Black Canary be with then?
Wonder Woman?
Oh,
Well, that's
I'm
I mean, why
just
does he
thinking,
have
John's
to
like
be-
everything's Wonder Woman. Just keep that as your answer for everything.
Keeps
does she
coming
want
back to Wonder Woman.
But why does she have to be with anybody?
True.
Well, they're one of the main quintessential couples in the comics. They've been written together for like ages.
She's a better fighter, and she's actually got a power. All he does is drag her down.
All right. So why does it have to be about the power? Why can't they just simply love each other?
Uh-oh.
Does Oliver actually really love anything?
Now I need to work on a nihilist version of Green Arrow for John. But yeah, I of the DC couples, they're the exception of like Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. I think they're the one I get the most. Simply because they both have kind of the similar-ish baggage, and they don't need to save each other. They work well together, but they can do their own things, and they each have their own motivations. There's agency on both sides, and so when it's together, it's not as, oh god, they have to save this person again.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next couple was Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn.
I didn't even know they were a couple. So
Yeah.
I'll let you guys
Yeah,
answer
they're a
this.
couple.
Yeah,
They're a couple.
after everyone after all the Hot Topic kids made DC make Harley Quinn a hero, and then they finally listened to the criticism on Harley Quinn and Joker being
Extremely abusive.
one of the worst possible relationships for anyone to be in. Like, what if this happened? And everyone's like, yes, actually, thank you. They come in with similar baggage, but they're not beholden to that baggage, and they both walk in that
They're
same sort of
actually-
moral gray
It
area.
gives them a lot more in common.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're a little protective of each other.
Yeah, they're very adorable in their non giant mallet vine whippy moments.
Yeah, they have layers.
Yeah,
And I was always kind of freaked out at how popular Joker and Harley Quinn were. It was like,
it's weird.
it's a sick relationship, and you guys are like, yay!
Well, it's basically a Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, Bonnie and Clyde's
Mhm.
infamous for being a criminal couple. That's literally, to me, that's what I saw
Right.
the Joker and Harley Quinn is a Bonnie and Clyde thing.
I feel like that's what a lot of people get into it kind of at surface level, but as you see more of what Joker did to Harley to essentially turn her into Harley Quinn.
Well, yeah, it's complete manipulation.
But
yeah.
what I see but I see more in Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, even though they are heroes in new DC timeline. I do see more of that Bonnie and Clyde aspect where uh, if they were to rob a bank, they would do it together. One wouldn't force the other one to do it.
Right. They're kind of in cahoots. But
Yeah.
he turned her kind of like, I guess, to the criminal,
Mhm.
her criminal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Do any of you guys read Invincible or read Invincible?
Mm-mm.
I read
Tell
the
us about it.
first volume.
First
yeah.
volume? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Adam and Eve is another couple in there that I really like.
Yeah.
Romantic wise. So I know the
Why?
TV show's starting like what, next month?
Right.
Okay, so why do you like them?
They actually, because they ended the story, and I liked them because it was kind of like they got together, Invincible and Adam and Eve, and then they didn't. And then they eventually, it was just like when they were together, it was just kind of like they stuck together and eventually had a family. So it actually, most comics follow like a natural course of like a relationship. Like, yeah, we're together, we're stick together, growing a family. And then they eventually, he quits the superhero business. And there's more to the story now. I'm not giving that much away. And then they settle down. Which I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And then they followed through with the whole romantic sort of situation. There was no real drama afterwards. They were
Yeah,
together and kind of stayed together.
You follow their life and career of like a healthy relationship in real time.
Exactly.
They
That
don't-
was a little different for
Yeah.
superheroes.
They don't have to unage their characters for 50 years and figure out new ways to inject drama.
Right.
Oh, Miracle Man and Big Barda.
That was my next one. Yeah. Miracle Man and Big Barda.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the the one that has the most humor, because Miracle Man just gives zero like any kind of care to the way Darkseid thinks about him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
like Big Barda.
No.
I think she kicks ass myself, but
I don't think Miracle Man gets as much credit as he should.
Yeah.
I
I know
also
Big Barda. I didn't know they were a couple. I didn't know that. But then again, I read very intermittently. I
Didn't
read
they
whatever I
have a
get from the
kid?
library.
They had a kid in the Tom King run, didn't they?
I don't know.
think
I
they-
just I always liked it because she was definitely not the submissive type. They had either an equal relationship, or she was actually the dominant one in the couple, I thought. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know
I'm not
much
too
about
familiar.
them.
Read that
Yeah,
one.
I'm not too super familiar with them, so I couldn't. either way.
Actually, in most cases, yes, she was probably the more dominant, because she was the more take charge personality the Miracle Man was. Miracle Man is definitely more, let me analyze the situation and see how best to take care of it.
She was just like, let's smash them. All right. How about Peter Parker and Mary Jane? Like them or not? Or did you prefer Gwen Stacy?
I am a Gwen Stacy ride or
Yeah.
die.
I was kind of more of a Gwen Stacy.
But yeah,
Um,
and we don't acknowledge the Norman Osborn retcon.
Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy?
That was
Mary Jane?
there's a weird retcon that happened fairly recent timeline where Gwen Stacy had more or less an affair with Norman Osborn while she's with Peter, and I don't think I know anyone who has read any Marvel comics that actually gives that run any sort of credit. But
There's another one that's on the list of the most hated romances is Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn.
yeah, but Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker, I mean, they were just too perfect, if that makes sense. It was great because you're like, oh, our boy Pete's, he has something great in his life, and then it gets stolen, and it's the opposite resolve in making it a permanent relationship, and then trying to find ways to inject drama or change something. Like, it's within his grasp, and then it's resolved by taking it away forever. And if you're doing it, I mean, as long as characters die in comics, but
Yeah, they always come back.
yeah, but as far as like having a relationship resolve in permanence, but still have a fond memory, or have some sort of like long-term impact, I feel like that was one of the best examples. But I don't think anyone can do it now, since it has already happened, and everyone would just immediately think, "Oh, this is derivative of Gwen Stacy."
So why was, when you put the two of them up together, MJ and Gwen Stacy, what made Gwen Stacy more attractive as a storyline than MJ for a love interest? Was MJ just boring?
Uh, MJ just seemed. I mean,
Tim just has a thing for blondes.
well, I won't say you're wrong, but the as MJ got more developed, I don't know if it's just like the writer at the time, um, but she ended up developing more toxic traits, or just developed in such a way that it became more of a, and not in a way that you get the therapy storyline. It was the she just ended up becoming either the damsel in distress recurring, or she became the antagonist to Peter trying to go out and be Spider-Man. And it ended up just serving to kind of annoy readers in the comic rather than having them root for her character to do stuff. They wanted her to stop doing stuff. They wanted her to become a non-character because the way her character developed was in a way that felt unnatural for where they were heading. And so the character didn't serve the plot didn't serve the character, and it just kind of felt weird at a time. They have since kind of made things better, especially post House of M. But at the time, it just. Whereas when Gwen Stacy developed, she seemed to develop in a way that made more sense for working alongside Peter as opposed to working against him. And so. And I haven't read too much of Mary Jane's relationship with Peter since that kind of turned me off. So I assume they did something to make her more of a character that isn't a semi-antagonist.
A little bit too abrasive?
Wasn't necessarily that her character was abrasive, it's just that she took actions contrary to character and in a way ended up doing more damage to the relationship with Peter. As opposed to Gwen, in my opinion.
All right. Hank Pym as Ant-Man and the Wasp.
All right.
I only know their relationship. I read the Ultimates. That's the one, and that was a rocky relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like an abuser in that one.
He's
I don't know
an
if he is
abuser.
in real.
Yeah, and in main timeline too, he is to the point where I think he has not really been brought into any stuff recurring. He's just stayed old Hank most of the time, and they've stuck with Scott Lang a lot because Hank's character is not just abusive towards Wasp, but abusive towards everyone. And so when you also put a character who people like as much as a Wasp in that thing, you're like, why is he a hero? He doesn't feel like it. He feels like he's much more of a detriment to the people in his life.
Anybody else? Yeah, I think they brought in Scott Lang to fix the situation.
Yeah.
Kind of, break it out a little bit. So anyone here watch Robotech when they were a kid?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you think, Lisa Hayes or Min-May?
Min-May.
Really?
Annoying. She was annoying. I'll give her that.
Really, you're the first. Most people go Lisa Hayes. I'm a Lisa Hayes person. You thought Lisa was annoying?
Yeah. No, I thought Min-May was annoying, but I liked her better. Does that make sense? She was annoying, but I liked her.
Yeah, she was. She was supposed to be like
She
super
was cooler.
young. She was the rock star, whatever. And at the end, I did think it was funny at the very end when the world's basically being destroyed. He's like, "Sorry, babe, we got to break up." I'm like, "Why you guys just all hug together? I mean, you're all gonna die, you know?" Like, no. And I think he ended up marrying Lisa Hayes and like later after the series and stuff later on. But yeah, you're the first. I have a friend who just like every time I bring up Min-May, he's just like, no. She just hates her with passion. I'm like, poor Min-May. She's not that bad.
What's like?
Yeah, I used to used to try to figure out how to sing her songs when she doesn't sing in English, and it makes no sense.
Yeah. uh,
Oh,
yeah, that was kind of when I was growing up. That was a classic love triangle. I think when I watched
Mhm.
cartoons was the Robotech Minmay Lisa Hayes.
it was a good
Encounter.
poll. I thought it was.
It was.
Interesting.
I can't think of any others. I think in the comic books wasn't like Snake Eyes and Scarlet like a couple. I don't think they were.
I know the Baroness and Deathstroke was.
Yeah.
Were they? Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How about Juggernaut and She-Hulk?
Were they actually
Yeah.
a couple? Seriously?
I know She-Hulk and Thor had a fling, and
Yeah, I
That
saw.
was a-
Yeah, that they did. But yeah,
Yeah.
this was
some of them was steamy.
Yeah. But
Uh,
yeah. Wait, was that before or after Juggernaut lost the Demon Stone?
I think that was.
I mean, I would think like, at least they can handle
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah, right. But I mean, also it's super because She-Hulk is also incredibly well educated.
Yeah, and Juggernaut's just like basically
He's
like
just a boy from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
He's just a boy from Brooklyn.
He's a boy
very
from
much
Brooklyn
an odd couple.
who picked up a Demon Stone. Is like, I am big now, and nothing can stop me.
what was he a full brother or step brother? The Xavier wasn't he a full brother?
Step.
Step brother. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
I think in the same vein, at a later time though, was the possibility, which is currently ongoing, of the Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and Eddie Brock as Venom. Now anti-hero, and
Really?
so now since Annie ended up leaving Eddie after they had their kid, and Eddie's now a single dad and looks very rugged all the time because his main thing is he just always dies and nearly gets beaten up whenever he deals with, because all of his enemies now are so much more powerful than him, and he's like, I don't know how I'm doing this. But Carol's super into that rugged, nearly like half dead look, apparently. So so every time he walks into a like Avengers mansion or whatever, Carol's like, hey Eddie, you're looking real good. I like that beard. So She-Hulk is now just trying to like get Carol in the back room, like, no, stop thirsting over him. So that's the same kind of tension where it's at UST, but it's in such an adorable way where you want to see it happen, but also you just want to see these jokes continue on for so long.
Right, and then trying to get together.
Yeah.
Well, didn't Carol Danvers like date Tony Stark for a while or something, or was it Captain
Rhodey.
America?
It was Rhodey, yeah.
Rhodey. She was
okay.
in love with Rhodey.
That was War Machine, right?
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah, okay.
And then she ended up dating Star-Lord for a bit. And now she's single and thirsting after Eddie.
I did not know that. That's a
On
good
to
one.
the next conquest.
Symbiote.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, here's one that will definitely squick you. If you don't know what squick is, it's like
Yeah.
Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
Quicksilver.
Oh.
Hmm,
The
They're brother and
incest.
sister.
Yeah.
that's not good.
It's not.
Yeah,
It's,
no. Was that main timeline or alternate timeline?
That was the first timeline.
Yeah.
I always
That
thought
was-
it was funny. No one brought that up with Magneto. Hey, Magneto, your kids are like like
Knocking
putting it
boots.
together. They're not my kids. That's why he doesn't talk about it. Maybe I don't
Yeah.
know.
Oh, right. So I remember because they had to do that whole thing where they did the weird thing that you, instead of just wiping it under the carpet, which you should do, just say, okay, that never happened. That was alternate timeline.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's comics. We can do whatever we want. They tried to justify it because they had a whole plot line where they found out that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were not in fact actually Magneto's kids. They were like separate test tube babies.
Doesn't matter.
It's like, but
Not
no.
even.
I think the timeline that they did that in, they were just like toxically codependent
Yeah.
upon each other.
There's a part of me I wondered why they killed Quicksilver in that Avengers movie. That's probably more because the Quicksilver is an X-Men. But you wonder if look, if we just kill him off really quick, we don't have to worry about the whole incest storyline.
Have you watched WandaVision yet?
No, I don't. You could go ahead and tell me all you want. I don't. I'm not really
Well,
into
I
this.
don't know if we're at the I don't know if we're at the week-long spoiler roll yet. But
Oh,
the
the
new
spoiler
episode
warning.
just came out Friday.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
episode
so
just came out Friday.
More than one of them.
but if you're I'll point this out. If you were to go to Marvel or Disney Plus in the Marvel section now, where you
Yeah.
have the canon Marvel movies, they now have what's listed as Legacy Marvel, which has X1, X2, Days of the Future Past, and Apocalypse, as well as the Fantastic Four movies, right next to the current MCU.
That's weird.
Legacy. I guess just Legacy is non-MCU movies, I guess.
Prior
Yes.
to Iron
Or-
Man 1, probably.
Or they are. I mean, if you, I mean, so the way they did is when they required they were Norton Hulk. That's technically the first movie in the MCU, even though it's not treated as
Yeah.
such. Yeah. And to the point, even like I think they even mentioned some stuff from Ang Lee's Hulk, which is criminally underrated.
Yeah. I
but
actually liked that one. I know
Yeah.
nobody liked that.
yeah.
I thought it was cool.
But so now that they've required these titles and they've put them in the same directory as the MCU, and they have TV shows going up in that same directory, some characters are cast, and so with the getting I don't think it was planned when they killed off Quicksilver in Ultron, but going into Infinity War, their acquisition of Fox is already planned and as they were negotiating. So things have been planned since and have been further developed in the TV shows.
Okay.
Yes, and it's awesome.
It's great.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
I hopefully avoided spoilers for the viewing audience.
No, I have
Yeah.
Disney Plus. I didn't realize that I could get the Legacy movies. I
Yeah.
haven't looked at that.
All right, I have one,
Okay.
and I'm gonna see how people work around it because it's an image couple.
Mm.
Susie and John.
Susie and John.
Something
Mhm.
R-rated criminals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes. I
Yeah.
never read that comic, but I heard it's supposed to be really good.
It
It's
is. Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Okay.
What do you like about it?
Apparently, a certain act can cause time to stop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
The,
And then
That
they don't think
makes time stop?
when a man loves a woman,
Yeah.
they freeze time and go commit crime.
Yeah, they go commit crime.
Okay.
I've heard of it. The concept is a weird concept, to be sure.
I'm
Yeah.
sure many men would love to freeze time at that specific point, but
Right. Well, she also has that power, so it's
Yes, they both do.
yeah.
Yes.
So when they do it together, it's amplified.
so
So
like, do they
is
have
it
a certain amount of time that they have to, or this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it-
Yeah. Is it 40 minutes or something like that?
That's not much time to cause a lot of damage.
Yeah.
It depends on where you do it, I suppose. If you do it in the
Well,
alley,
and it's not this. It's not the act, but it's that one thing that happens that women say that, or some women have said. Let me rephrase that. They've never had.
Got
But
it.
yeah, once that moment happens, they have the timer starts, and they have until
Right.
to go out and commit crime.
But why crime?
That's
I
strange.
mean,
Well, that's I mean, it's
that's part of the story. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously,
who came up
yeah.
with this?
Somebody who actually got image to publish.
I know.
Who's the writer? Who's the writer?
I don't know. Was it Sting, the perpetrator of certain Tantric acts?
I can't remember. Is the series done or is it still going?
I believe it's done.
Is it?
You can get. Let me see here. I always do my shows with Comixology open in the background because it's great for research.
Do you want to see some coloring? I finally finished
Yeah,
drawing
yeah.
a page.
I
Yes,
have a
please.
screen. I had the screen share on. I think for that anyone, multiple participants can share simultaneously. So I'd assume you can probably try to share.
I can try.
Yeah.
It was written by Matt Fraction and it ran
Chip, and
2014.
it was illustrated by Chip.
I don't know.
There's
Open
Mhm.
system preferences. Oh shoot.
So why don't you think anybody like Batman just never seems to destined to settle down? I mean, yeah, there's Selena Kyle,
Yeah.
He
and
almost married.
but he never ever. He's like a lone wolf. He never
Because
really
crime
ever.
never sleeps, Barbara.
Well, you would think if anybody would understand, Selena Kyle would,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Batwoman, or somebody, you
Mhm.
know.
I
Or
would've thought
what's
so.
her name? What's her name? Crap. Damien's mom.
Oh,
Mm.
the not Ra's al Ghul's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talia. Is it Talia?
Talia?
Yeah, Talia.
Yeah.
Hasn't he killed her
Actually,
like twice?
she'd understand more than Selena would, actually.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the main things I always go to with Batman storylines is the fact that he is a self-destructive person.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I think that they always try to play that into his relationships, that even though he would get someone like Selena Kyle or Talia, even people who you imagine it'd be very hard to do something that would shock them into ending your relationship, you somehow manage to do it.
He
Yeah.
also always self-sabotages his relationships. Is
Mhm.
that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So, were there any couples that you guys that had sexual tension, but you hoped would not get together because you didn't think there would be a match?
Well,
Wow.
I mean,
I
well,
think
not so much that
I
there would
think
be a match, but Iron Man, Tony Stark, and Pepper Potts, there's that power dynamic is awkward.
this is a non-comic one, but I never wanted Scully to get together with Mulder, even though they
Mm.
did. I don't know why. I just always liked them better as just working professionals.
But they,
There
And
was a perfect example of a long-running
there you go.
series
yeah.
I made
that
it
had
better.
I-
the unresolved sexual tension until like the
And
last episode.
the
Yeah.
last episode, and then I think in one of the movies they showed them living together,
Yeah.
and then they break up. So it was like even remote relationship was like very minor. The other one that was classic when I was growing up. Did you guys ever watch Northern Exposure at all?
Mhm.
No.
No. Okay. Yeah. That was another one that was Joel and Maggie, and that show was another one that was a big like are they not? And then when they finally got together, they did get them together, and then they were such fire and ice that they eventually kind of. But strangely enough, the guy who was part of that show left, and they kind of destroyed the show. So it was almost like once they resolved the sexual tension and brought in somebody else to continue the show just died,
Mhm.
which is weird. Like you would think, like with X-Files, like if you get rid of the sexual tension, I still think X-Files would succeed. Other shows, but are there certain shows that once you resolve that sexual tension, is the show over?
It
Even though it's
jumps the
about
shark.
yeah, I don't know.
In Lord of the Rings, if you read the original books, there isn't a lot of romance because it
Yeah,
was
the
written in a
movies.
time. Yeah, it was written in a time when it was more misogynistic and you know, women weren't that powerful.
Mhm.
But they actually changed the movie to bring in romantic elements and couples, and
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of personally I didn't like that.
I
Interesting.
think that Aragorn and the elf lady,
Aelwyn.
Erwin. What was the other ones? When didn't they do one in the Hobbit? Oh yeah, the little dwarf guy and
Oh,
the elf lady.
that was weird.
Yeah, but that wasn't in the books. I mean,
No.
most of that stuff was all just made up for the movie.
Yeah, it was made up for the movie, and I'm a purist. I want to stick to the books, you know. And they were bringing that in to make a statement, I suppose, to empower women. And I'm all for empowering women. Don't get me wrong, because I mean, you know, I'm a woman and everything, but I'm also a purist, and I didn't believe in changing the book just to be PC. I don't know. That would probably make
I
I'll
agree with
probably
you
get
on
hate
that.
mail. I'll probably get hate mail for that, but
I can
No, I
send you hate
totally
mail if
agree
you
with
want.
you. It's not necessary to change it.
Yeah,
You get changing problematic elements, but don't know if there's anything that's like really problematic about the Lord of the Rings, because it was just guys go off and die and hobbits do
yeah,
stuff.
I mean, if there was like serious racism or something like that in it, that's one thing. But bringing in a female just to throw in a female doesn't make sense to me.
It almost gets
Yeah.
I liked Eowyn, but there are certain elements where like you see that happen and it becomes more of a token character.
Yeah, that's just that. That's what I felt kind of
Yeah.
insulted.
Yeah.
Strange enough, I have two friends that actually think the movies did better than the books, and they've read the. And I don't know. I've never I never read the books, but I know it, enough about them. But it's weird. I see people like you who are like, no, the books, and then I have two friends like, no, I think the movies actually did better than the
As
books.
somebody
I
who
like the books. I like
as somebody
Oh, go ahead.
as somebody who has been a token female, I feel insulted that they brought in token females. You know, to
Tolkien. Is that a pun, Barb?
That is. Oh my god.
I was thinking when you first said it, I'm like Tolkien. Oh, Tolkien. Got it.
Mhm.
It's like, see, we have a female artist. So I've been there, and it's kind of insulting to bring it in. I would have preferred if they would have stuck to the original script.
Yeah, I at least like that they gave them agency in their own choices to make.
There you go.
I mean, Eowyn, and I forgot her name. The one from the Rohirrim. Because her motivation was her motivation wasn't to get with Aragorn. He was an attractive piece of man that walked into town one day. But her motivation was to do what she could to protect her home and family because her family had just been killed.
And the book did have a female heroine. It's the one that killed. You couldn't be killed by any man. I'm not a man. So that was canon.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. But and she had a great agency, and then Eowyn also took the choice to buck her father's rules to ride out on her own and go save the hobbits at the river. And so I like that they had choices to make. They weren't just, I am a woman here to serve Aragorn.
Yeah.
If they had just done that, I think it would have been especially heinous. But I can definitely see where your point is coming from, Barb.
They were added to plump it up, I think.
Yeah. There was... we didn't see it in New Mutants, thankfully. But I also frequent a podcast called Unexplained, and we talked about representation in comics and how it's improved recently. But there is a concept in writing called the magical minority, where you have a character from a marginalized group show up just to do one thing and they disappear, just so you can say you have representation. And how that happens with Cloak a lot. And recently he has been given storylines, but then some old Gen X and New Mutants type stuff, Cloak would show up, teleport people, and then he'd be gone. And you're like, is the black guy there just to do that?
Yeah, that's kind of, and it's so obvious too when they do that.
Yeah. And a different note, Tommy in chat says Betty and Jughead make a cute couple.
Are there couples that shouldn't hook up? That brings up that point. Are there couples in comics that should never hook up or should never have hooked up? That did and shouldn't?
Well, I believe we do have a review, so if you don't mind, Barb, we could get to that after the break.
You bet.
That'd be great.
So we'll cut to review now, and we'll see you guys after the break.
Hi, this is Wayne Hall back again with comics that you can get locally. There's indie comics in particular. And this week I want to change things a little bit up. I want to do some comics that maybe your local comic shop doesn't have, but a local store might. And that is Walmart. Walmart has books called, from Allegiance Comics anyway, and there are 4 of them right now. They come in the local Walmart, and they are Nora's Saga, The Futurists, Red Rooster, and this one, Bass Reeves. There's a new one coming called The Saints that'll be up as well. Now, This is the one I happen to like the best out of the group. If you go to a Walmart, what you'll see is there'll be like a stand, like what they call an end cap, a thing that usually is on the end of a line. And it has right now 4 comics, 2 issues each. This is the second issue, or is it? This is actually the beginning of the series. Bass Reeves happens to be the person upon which the Lone Ranger series is based. And he was a person who worked for the police hunting down criminals. And he was very much of a real person. Interestingly enough, the comic doesn't refer to the Lone Ranger legend, but it's in here. People know this pretty much, and I thought this one is a really good comic. Bass Reeves was a guy of color. He was chosen by like the United States Marshals to be a hunter, not necessarily a bounty hunter, but a hunter of criminals. And this is where he gets the badge right there. Now, the legend is because he was a person of color, they wanted to make him into the Lone Ranger, but they didn't want to make him a person of color, which is why he got the black mask. That's what they say anyway. It's interesting because that's the person on which this comic is based. It's interesting to read. There weren't a lot of people of color in the West during that time. There were some, but very few. And it was interesting that he was able to do the hunting quite a bit. The interesting thing about Bass, and it might be Bass, I don't know how it's pronounced, was that his son actually became a criminal, and he ended up having to go and arrest his own son. And that's part of what's going on in the first issue. We see the business about his son. We get to meet his son and how he was raised. And because he's a marshal and somebody who's extremely scrupulous, things don't go always the easiest. And when he finds out that his son, and by the way, here's a picture of what the Bass Reeves really look like. I find that really interesting about that. And then this is actually something that is a real document that he signed. So he's a real person. Kind of an interesting thing. I love the character. I love the history aspects of the book. I'm sure there's some stretching and pulling to make this fit the comic format. But it was really interesting, especially, February being a Black History Month. I thought this was a great time to talk about this book. And it's really, really well done. Kevin Griveau is the author. It's a French name, I'm sure. But the first episode's called No God West of Fort Smith, and it has to do with the fact that because it's so wild, the West is the Wild West, there's no belief that God is anywhere out there. So, Bass Reeves has to go step in. And he's an excellent shot. He is determined. He never lets somebody get away from him. And so it's a very interesting book. There are actually 2 of these out right now. This is the first one. And of those 4 books, this is the one I really like the best. And I highly recommend this if you can get this. I have a strong feeling that these aren't only going to be in Walmart for much longer because they're quite good. And this one is, like I said, my favorite. And I am fascinated by a person of color. I have this thing about people of color in comics. I just think that it's terrible to slap a person of color into an established identity. I think that's a cheat. I think world building or real things can do a much better job of telling those kinds of stories. I mean, Superman, they completely built the whole world around Superman at the start. So why not do that with these characters? And because this is a real person, I just adore this book. I think the art is kind of good. And 2, it's a little craggy. David Williams is the name of the artist. And lots of action and some drama as he wrestles with himself, especially when it concerns his son. That's a big deal. When the son goes bad and he has to go after him, That's hard for Bass to do it. So it's a very compelling story. It's a strong character. It's a person of color. It's just a well done book, and I wanted to make an exception for the local shops just this week, so I could talk about this comic because I think this is a great way to kick off the Black History Month, talking about this person who was the actual inspiration for the Lone Ranger, as I said. Anyway, let's get to the grading here. The writing. The writing is really good. And granted, as I said, there are real things going on and there's real events taking place in this book. But what's interesting is that there's some, I'm sure, pulling and stretching of the facts to make sure that it goes. But it's really well put together and it's very compelling. I love the fact that this book actually came out and this is part of that series from Allegiance. It's a great book. I love the writing. It's very compelling. They make no bones about the fact that he's a person of color, and in an era where a person of color was not considered an important part of society, he is because of what he can do. And so I think that's very important. The writing is really good about that. The art, as I mentioned, is a little craggy. Things are a little hard to understand once in a while. I like it because it fits the story. I would give it a good B because it's a perfect fit for this kind of story. So I think that a B is good. There are places I would have liked a little different, but that's what I got. Okay, lettering. As I'm always really critical of lettering, I really do think that they do the lettering very well in this book. They're not covering over the art that much. That always drives me insane. So I would give it a good B. There are places where I would have liked it a little differently, but it's okay. So I like that very well. Lettering B. Literary merit. This story takes place in the 1800s, and I think it's still gripping and compelling today. So I would give literary merit an A. I have not seen this story told in any other form before. So for me, I really like that. And so the literary merit for me is just great. An A all the way. I wish this could be used in school classes, especially this month. But let's go on to fun factor. As always, the books that I like, fun factor is never a big deal. There's very little humor in here, and when it's in here, it's a very dark humor. When Bass kind of gives it and quotes Bible to people and stuff like that he's about to capture. There's this kind of humor. When he's talking to the person and he's about to arrest him, you can see he kind of startles the guy and stuff. And that's a darkish humor. So I would give it a C, maybe. And then overall grade. Because I really love this book and I really want people to do, I would give this at least a B plus, could be an A. If the artwork was a little stronger, I would give this an A, but it's a B plus. And like I said, Walmart is the place to get these books. There's also a website, and let me give you the website is allegiancearts.com. If you can't find the Walmart, you could probably go there and buy it. I haven't seen it in Comixology yet, so it's pretty much right now uniquely a Walmart thing. This is the month when there are going to be more issues of these. There's only been 2 so far. The 3rd issue should be out in February. So if you can get the first 2, you can be up to speed with the rest of it for this month. So this is Bass Reeves. Again, it's Allegiance Comics, which I think you're going to want to look for. It's in the Walmart. I've seen them in these little stands that are what they call end caps on the end of an aisle or something like that. It's separate from other stuff. Although I have seen one Walmart where they put it in with like pops and things like that. So that's the book for this week, and look forward to talking with you soon. But until then, keep reading your comics.
What's our next topic?
Welcome back to Silver Sunday, hosted by Bob Krelberg.
Hello, everybody. We're back. While I'm thinking about it, you should definitely go to our website, SilverlineComics.com, and check out the contents there. You can order our books. If you've missed some of the back issues, you can order them through the comics website. and take a look at what our current roster is doing, and also interviews with some of our creators. So now we're back to romance and comics, and I'm going to ask our participants what they think makes a good romance storyline, writing wise. Jump in.
It's funny. I kind of I did write a romantic storyline into my Gollings comic I'm doing now, but it's kind of unrequited. If you read the story, you kind of understand why. But I'm trying to figure out when I wrote it, what did I think that was good about it? I don't know. Maybe I just idea that two people feel that way about each other, but then each one of them is kind of clueless. Like you, the reader, know, but they're kind of clueless that they feel that way about each other. I think is always fun until one of them finally figures it out or whatever.
Well, that's a very popular trope.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
How about you guys?
I think for me, it always comes down to agency. I have to believe that both people are real characters, and that they're not. The romance doesn't just serve the plot; that there is genuine reason for them to be interested. Either they come in bearing the same sort of baggage as before, or as being role into characters, they have some sort of ancillary interest that they end up having in common. It's not just male lead, female lead must kiss because that is what you do as a writer, and it they have to not just serve to save the other person. I have to believe that they're making choices outside of the obvious route. So it's not just one character serves to exist this other character in a romantic capacity, because then you also end up dealing with some weird power dynamic issues. And their romance does not just serve the plot, but rather serves their development further as growing and multidimensional characters. So,
Strange enough, I think a great example of that coming back to is X-Files again. Thinking both of them were kind of like that. I mean, they were both agents and they were both capable. They're both equal, and but their type of like relationship was more of like not so much romantic love, but it seemed to be more of like a love for like the safety of each other. I mean, there was kind of a romantic hint there, but more the fact, almost like a maybe brotherly sisterly love, like more of a family. But again, that I think I was thinking of examples we were talking about, Tim, and that's when it popped to mind that sort of they're both in it. I mean, they're both investigating these cases together as partners. And so the romance there is there in the background, but it's not the thing propelling the story. Not in the least. Yeah.
John? What do you like?
Oh.
What do you think makes a good? What do you think makes a good romance? I mean, there's so many tropes out there. There's the oblivious love, the unrequited love. There's the couple that one of them has a deep dark secret.
I'm going to be honest here. I don't really go looking for the romance stuff.
It's fine.
Be honest.
You just like action stuff.
Yeah.
But not necessarily just the action stuff. I mean, I don't know.
We need to get John a good Viking romance story. That's what will turn John to the dark side.
John is writing something.
Have I spilled the beans? I'm sorry.
Is her name Brunhilde?
Negative.
Oh,
Negative Ghost Rider.
Okay.
And I'm kind of thinking if something like that may be in there, but I haven't fully. I don't want to make it to where it's necessarily needed to further the plot.
Yeah.
I guess something that's there in the background that can kind of help assist the plot at times, but not like if it wasn't for the plot, this wouldn't be.
Do you
Okay.
think one of the weaknesses about the Barbara, like Superman and Lois Lane, is that they were not equal, like power wise? I mean, that seems to be like like John. I was kind of wondering that too, John. Like Wonder
Mhm.
Woman and Superman seem more equal. Do you think that that sort of equal power or equal like
Well, you can see. Well, I guess it kind of goes back with that. I mean, you don't need. Okay, we got to insert Lois Lane into what's going on into the plot of this in order
right?
to, you know, remind everybody they have a relationship.
Yeah, kind of, that like the issue that I had mentioned is I see that a lot in Lois Lane, where Lois Lane exists to serve as Clark Kent's interest, and the romance serves to serve the plot. There's not a
Well,
whole.
she
Yeah.
also serves to give Superman a weakness, like an Achilles heel. I
But he's
mean,
also got brain. What is it? Brain. Mind control's a weakness,
Mm.
and magic's a weakness.
well, that sort of weakness in that somebody can get to him through her. I mean, Batman, I guess, kind of, but
Yeah.
that sort of like, I mean, I mean, the original, Richard
Superman
Donner,
generally cares for people
Mhm.
right?
because of the way he was raised. You don't need to have somebody he loves there in danger in order for him to sit there and make those same choices.
That's
Point.
that is yeah,
Okay, I like that.
that's actually a reference to like almost like a biblical story, which Superman very much is that kind of concept that is played
You
into
could,
that.
he wants to save the city. If you endanger citizens of the city, he's going to make choices that are similar to some of the same choices he would make trying to save Lois.
I
Right.
agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Richard Donner did a good job in the original one when, he saved everyone, but he couldn't save Lois. And
I
so
think we just said that the folks who write Superman with Lois Lane being the love interest are lazy.
In the chat, Tommy says Aunt May and Uncle Ben made a great couple till Peter got Ben killed. Thanks, Peter.
Anybody else in the chat have an opinion on romance? I think this is a really good point. I've never been a fan of Lois Lane. I've always thought she was a prop.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. She
I
But
mean,
the
in-
world's supposed to be the prop, not the individual.
yeah.
Come to think of it, I'm actually trying to think of, can you think of any other superhero out there that does not have that immediate romantic connection with I mean, because Superman and Lois Lane, can you remember a time before Superman didn't have, I mean, it's always been Superman and Lois Lane, as far as I know. Now I'm trying to think of any other superhero that like they're always one or the other. I mean, nobody can actually, even though she may be a prop, no one can imagine Superman without Lois Lane. I guess kind of almost like Batman or Batman.
When you think of Superman and Lois Lane in terms of what originally was brought out as, think about the time that Superman came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was very much, man, take care of everything, woman, here.
Yeah.
Right. But do you ever think the fact that since he was the first superhero and romance comics are popular, that the Lois Lane Superman thing was a way of tying into that success of the romance comic? Maybe a little by giving him a romance. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. I don't know if that was ever intentional. But considering he was a superhero, first kind of superhero romance comics are still big, kind of like, well, okay, we'll put a romance in here because romance comics sell, but he's still a superhero. I don't know.
Well, that period right after World War II, where they had this
Yeah.
huge, it was like almost a fairy tale period where you look back on it, you've got the 50s, the husband comes home with a pipe, darling, and she hands him a martini and all that stuff like that. It was the whole ideal of the perfect life. And the little woman taking care of bringing the slippers to the man and stuff like that was really played up. And I wonder if that played into the fact that they had to have a little woman.
Yeah, but she was pretty
fuck?
fiercely independent in the comics, wasn't she? I mean, even
Yeah.
though she got into trouble and stuff and always had to be saved, she was pretty independent person. I don't know. I'm just trying. I'm honestly just trying to think of any other superhero that you can think of them without. Like, I mean, would you ever consider? I mean, would Lois Lane almost be like a sidekick? Is that Superman's sidekick? I don't know. That seems weird, but
I don't think
I
she
mean,
was empowered enough to be a sidekick.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I
It's-
mean, they just announce another Lois Clark and Lois TV show?
Yeah, they're married.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
I know.
I'd actually go as far as saying that you can take out the whole tension between Catwoman and Batman, and you can still make everything work just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Batman, I think, was always meant to be a loner.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
there's
I mean,
other
like-
lone wolves. You know, Wolverine, I think, is a lone wolf.
Yeah. Well,
But he works good with the women, though, too.
he always comes in. I always like Wolverine because he always put despite being his backstory being a murder bot. He's always written in such a way to be a positive male character in the same presence as females. There's no power dynamic grabs. It's always just. But with him and Jubilee, he essentially becomes an adoptive dad or
Yeah.
adoptive older
Same thing
brother.
with Shadowcat.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Shadowcat, and also especially with X-23, since she is more or less his daughter. Cloning is
Right.
weird, and he always is trying to put himself in harm's way, or at least be a positive role model, showing like you can do things certain ways. You can always try to put others above yourself, and at the same time, be the listening ear for these females in his life. And
He's
then
always losing his love interest.
yeah, and then he
They
has
kill him off. They always kill him off.
Well, the only one he hasn't lost is, well, he hasn't had to kill off a Storm.
mhm.
Got
And-
together with Storm. When did this happen?
Yeah, I didn't know he was with Storm.
They got together for a little bit
Yeah.
at one point, and then they separated, and then after Storm left T'Challa
Mhm.
to get back with Wolverine.
So because was that Claremont or Lodbell? Because that's an older one. I want to say it might be Lodbell.
Yeah. Claremont.
I
I
can't
don't
remember.
remember
I'm
this.
honestly, I can't remember, but I remember the page where T'Challa's like, "Tell me it's not him,"
Yeah.
and the look of disdain is just.
Always-
The idea of anyone being with Wolverine almost doesn't make sense at surface value because you got Wolverine, he's this stocky brawler dude who
Yeah.
his first response is to snick at someone, but
Yeah, but Storm grew up
Yeah.
on the streets, though.
yeah, but
So she connects really well with Wolverine.
yeah, and then we also see Wolverine's other side, the fact that he's been in so much war throughout his life that he wants to stop other people from having anything similar to his own experience. He is such a protector archetype that his cold front is just that, a front. He's actually very warm underneath, and Storm having that same sort of facade makes a really strong connection with that, in my opinion, too.
I think the other couple I liked the next from was Longshot and Dazzler. I always thought they were funny.
Huh.
Did you not know they were together?
No.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah,
never
they
knew
were
that?
together
Oh
for a
yeah.
short period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Longshot
trying
and
to think-
Dazzler
yeah.
were together for a good while.
Yeah.
Here's one that caught everybody off guard, though. It was it the late '90s, early 2000s when they did this? Shatterstar and Richter.
Oh yeah. I remember
Yeah.
that.
Somebody's mentioned Tony Stark, my favorite guy.
Well, I
That's
kind of
what
mentioned
we
that.
Playboy.
mentioned. We
I kind of mentioned that the ship that's always kind of weird to me is Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, while she's working at his company. I was like, that's a weird power dynamic. I have issues with this.
That is a little bit. He's been with the Wasp,
Yeah.
but I mean he's like he's the Playboy of,
Mhm.
of comics, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's the Bruce Wayne of Marvel. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I liked the.
Oh, do I notice a little sarcasm there?
So on the Unexplained podcast is on. We kind of mentioned this briefly, but Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne have the same superpower, which is planning and money. But Tony
Yeah.
Stark also has
Yeah.
lasers, so therefore he wins. But
I
And
think he's more
robots.
charming.
yeah,
And robots. I think he's more charming too.
yeah.
It's,
But
it's
I
good.
I also saw Tony Stark as kind of the same problem with Bruce Wayne in terms of relationships, is that he is a self-sabotaging character,
Mm-hmm.
which we saw a lot of in the Demon in the Bottle episode series or run.
Yeah.
Ugh. Um, but
He has
then
a lot of
also
self-hatred.
there's a lot of self-hatred, and also in International and Superior Iron Man, it was just you saw him get so full of himself, but in all the entire time he's just drinking himself into a grave behind all that.
There's a
And
lot more arrogance you get with Tony Stark than
yeah,
you get with Bruce.
This is true. He's a much more. I mean, I think they're both deeply, deeply flawed characters.
yeah,
You know, with a lot of baggage.
yeah,
Uh, but I think Bruce is angrier about it, and Tony is more self-hating
yeah.
about it.
And I think that's also in terms of bromances. I think that also works really well with his relationship with Cap, whereas Cap is so righteous to the point of being self-righteous, whereas Tony is self-hatred hidden underneath arrogance. You always get the point where Cap is trying to convince Tony to become the hero that he really is, and not give in to his self-hate, whereas Tony's will yell at Cap to stop being so full of himself and
Self-righteous.
yeah, take the either the more pragmatic or the more responsible approach rather than the optimistic or virtuous approach.
And I think you've hit on another aspect of romance, and that's the bromance. And I love bromance.
Yeah,
I absolutely adore bromance. It's one of my favorite tropes.
yeah,
The Cap and Iron Man and
Bromance, what? I don't think bromance, isn't it more like just like a really good friendship?
yeah, they're like very, very tight.
yeah,
Starsky and
So-
Hutch, you know? The Starsky and Hutch of comics. I think that's I mean, guys can have an incredibly close relationship without being romantic. You know, I love romance, and I think it is a form of romance. It's you love that person, you love them
Yeah.
like a brother. You would die for them.
I think yeah,
That's love.
that's I'm really looking forward to the Falcon and Winter Soldier series, especially
Yeah.
after the events of Secret Empire, where we saw that bromance really develop in the comics, and now seeing what that looked like on screen, especially with
I think it's hilarious.
yeah, with they're both great actors, so I'm very excited to see where that goes.
I mean, isn't
I-
romance love?
Yeah.
You'd die for this person. I mean, what higher form of love is there? Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody goes. "Ugh."
Neat.
Oh,
think you got
So,
Yeah.
what's some of the best bromances in comics?
Wolverine and
Robin.
Nightcrawler.
Yeah, Wolverine Nightcrawler. I would also say I'm going to do a DC reference this time, but Red Hood and Arsenal. That's a newer one, and it's also very interesting to see because they're both very violent people.
Violent people.
But
Batman and Robin.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sure.
That's like one of the obvious ones.
Is that a
Peter
bromance? Is it?
Parker and Deadpool.
yeah.
Mm, a
That's
good one.
more in Deadpool's head.
True.
Like you get to see more of when they did the crossover. They included Punisher and Cable, and they're both very kind of tack a turn, just practical people at the time. But then Peter Parker and Deadpool were trying to bromance the relationship. I think this was during the Age of Strife. That was one of my favorite moments. It's just they were set up in Dimension M or whatever. Cable and Punisher had sniper positions, and Peter Parker and Deadpool come into fast food because they jump dimensions. And they're like, "What are you doing? What's going on?" They're like, "Yeah, we're just hanging out. It's a good time, we're bros."
Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. I love those.
I love-
Those two.
God, that's what the DC Cinematic Universe messed up on, is they didn't start with the Booster Gold movie.
I know the Justice League when that run on Justice League with a JM, is it DeMatteis? Is that how you pronounce it? That was just
Yeah.
brilliant run. And they
Yeah.
were they were all living in like a big frat house, right?
Yeah,
And you had Ice and Fire and Ice and Booster and Blue Beetle, and I can't remember who else, but that was love that run because they were all like in a big frat house and
Yep.
and just being idiots.
And Tommy just backed up that Blue and Booster relationship.
Yeah. And getting out of DC and Marvel, you've got Skywise and Cutter in the ElfQuest series.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
there were some of my favorites. I'm trying to think of any others. Yeah, because you get times talking about Marvel and DC, I think the X-Men is the only thing I read. I read some Avengers stuff, but like if you guys talk X-Men, I can do that. But beyond that, I
All right,
know
so
very
who's the-
little. I'm sorry.
That's right.
So who's the big bromance in X-Men?
Depends on who is alive at the moment. I think
It
right.
does kind of depend on who's alive.
I think right
I
now.
actually,
Uh,
and I think it's Wolverine and Nightcrawler's
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Over Nightcrawler is probably the best one, the longest running. Also, Wolverine Colossus at times. Right now, actually, see a really weird bromance between Xavier and Magneto, and also
That's been
Yeah.
a long-running one.
yeah, and then now with the Hickman run, where the mutant state of Krakoa, where now all the mutants have allied themselves and say like, all right, no more dead mutants. Now you see this really weird relationship where Xavier and Magneto are the fathers of a giant family that includes Mr. Sinister, Exodus, Apocalypse, and you're like, how does this work? Because comics. But it's really
The way
it's
they
really
got
fun.
it layered, it works.
It's I enjoy I enjoy when X-Men gets into the politics of establishing a mutant state. I like the Genosha storyline. I liked Planet M. It's all and this is so much fun for me. What's going on right now, but also I like how they set it up. They gave a lot of agency to Moira McTaggart, who, admittedly in Lodwell's run, was kind of just there to establish a school and be smoochy partners with Professor Xavier. But now all of everything they explained that everything that happened in the X-Men, all the reason they have had success recently is because of her. And they give her so much story, and I really appreciate giving Moira so much agency going into it.
You're talking about the Jonathan Hickman run?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that right
I-
there,
I-
and that explains a lot of the whole different alternate timelines that
Oh, yeah.
the X-Men have had too. So
See, I'm probably the only one that did not like that. Sorry, I liked Moira McTarget when she was human. I did not like the fact they made her a mutant, because it's error. Because she was a research scientist who worked with Xavier. She was a research scientist, and the Keeper's a research scientist. Like, no, she's a mutant. I'm like, okay.
but it adds another layer.
Everybody's a
Aaron.
mutant.
Yeah.
What? Well, it just gets like everybody's with the X-Men. Like, are there any human contacts? No, they're all secretly mutants. Obviously, they're all mutants because everyone has to be a mutant.
Well, I think even
Somebody sounds bitter.
I mean,
Yeah, I pretty much tossed the X-Men aside a little bit after Claremont's run. I liked the Claremont's run, and then everything I've read so far, like I said, I did not like the X. I think it's pretty much when the X Gene came in. When the X Gene came in, I pretty much just tossed X-Men. I was just like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm sorry. There was some sort of concept of genetics, and then they're like, no, there's one gene. It's like, okay, that's not how genetics works. And I know it's comic books, but still, I can't. No,
broke you.
sorry.
It's called suspension of disbelief.
and
It's not happening with me on that one.
well,
Sorry, it's just not gonna do it.
The nice thing is if you read a lot of Lodbell and then Brubaker, you even need to suspend disbelief because they go super hard into like here's how genetic viruses work with the Apocalypse and Strife runs. For like ages ago, someone just started playing God of Genetics, and then the Kree developed the. And there's a whole bunch of issues where it's just pop fiction science magazine.
Yeah, I've read. I think I read I'm not sure if I read Brubaker. I read the new X-Men that started getting a little bit. I don't know that I like the X-Men to a point, and then I don't know. There were some things like I'm one of those people look, it doesn't have to be scientifically accurate, but sometimes you make stuff scientifically accurate, you actually make it much more interesting. There's many comics I read. Appleseed is another one. Appleseed, when he wrote that, he studied SWAT tactics and SWAT techniques, And that makes that comic 1,000 times more interesting than any other action movie, because you actually see how these guys are trained, what they're doing, the way they do things. And so Appleseed has actually kind of ruined me for a lot of other action comics and movies, because every time I see them, like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. Real life and actual reality and sticking to science things that works make things much more interesting than being like, no, it's comics. It's just, okay.
I have a tendency to do that too. I'm proofreading over the script for Divinity 3,
Mhm.
and RA had some bad guys shooting an Uzi from a ridge over, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you can't. An Uzi is a short range weapon. You
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to have and I named off a couple of Mossbergs or something like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can't remember the makes and models for a longer range. If you're going to use a Uzi, you got to get up a lot closer.
Yeah. I'm
Because
looking.
I was raised in a family that likes guns.
I'm looking forward to the aftermarket
Yeah,
critiques
you
that
can't.
I'm looking forward to the aftermarket critiques that AJ, John, and I will get on Wolf Hunter, because we have a lot of historical reference to vehicles and places in 1940 England during the Blitz, and someone's going to come and be like, well, actually, back then this thing would have had this here and not here, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, and I get that.
There's always that,
Yeah.
but at least if you're just a little, so
The-
you don't have to be. Yes,
I've
yeah, I don't.
I've done so much. I have bookmarked the book, database of historical law in England, right? I've read English legal code pertaining to 1940, right, in
Right.
a comic book.
I think it just makes it interesting. I think
Yeah.
when people do their research, I think it can kind of push the believability
and
of stuff a little bit more.
and that's why you need to have believable romances, because if any one of
There
our
you go.
partners just came in and was like,
Screw Mossberg 4
I'm
times.
back from saving the world, now go make me dinner, it's like, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Strange enough, the book I'm working on for Silverline, I'm in the back of my head. And this never be in the comic, but I'm all like, oh yeah, these guys in the future, so they'd be using caseless ammunition by this time in the future, and I'm just like, okay, and it wouldn't be ejected, and like I like is stuff in the comics, no, but it just makes the characters much more interesting for me to design as a solo like functioning unit, instead of like they have a gun. It's like, no, how would they actually function? How would
That's
technology
cool.
expand into the future and do this? That's what I mean, strange enough, when I was in the, like, because we're referencing a lot of aliens for this book, and that's what he said. I mean, and James Cameron does that stuff all the time. Like, they're like, yeah, the pulse rifles and aliens. Yeah, they used
Just
to
don't do
like
relationships like they did in Demo Man.
what?
Just don't do relationships like they did Demolition Man.
But they like, he's like, yeah, I think the 32 millimeter pulse caseless ammunition for the pulse rifles isn't necessary for the movie. No, but it just shows that he's actually thinking, like, if they're in the future, this is how guns would eventually go. This is why in the Aliens movies you don't see any ejecting brass, because they don't have any brass. It's all caseless ammunition. So it's like that stuff is like, me and my friend have sit there and contemplated how the actual smart guns work, because they don't seem to have any ammunition, and when they actually undo the ammunition in that one scene in Aliens, it gets all the aliens, they pop this sort of magnetic. So we're saying that's probably not the ammunition, that's probably just the connector for the ammunition. The ammunition is probably stored somewhere in the back or in the gun somewhere, but we haven't. And I'm sure I can look this up and research it. But that kind of stuff is cool. Cameron does that all the time in his movies, which makes them 1,000 times more interesting.
You don't have to suspend your disbelief quite as
No.
much.
No. So yeah, I don't know. So X-Men kind of went a little bit, because I was just thinking, like, yeah, if you did some really, but then again, I read the comic and this lady could control weather with her mind. So I mean, what do I know? Yeah. So I mean, there's a sense of disbelief in that.
I mean,
Inherently.
anytime you get anything with cape characters, you have to assume that things are just going to stop making sense at a certain point, and it's
Yeah.
No
you just-
more capes. No more capes. Never made sense to me in the first place.
Wait a minute. I don't think a lot of superheroes even have capes anymore.
No,
When I think they get rid of them.
they even reduced the amount of pouches.
They did.
Yeah, But-
okay, that's it. I gotta bring it back.
yeah, but when you have so much
Just for Silverline.
when you have so much room to play with and kind of your other world building, you can spend so much time thinking about your relationships and how you can research and think about how your own romantic relationships, or how, like, if you have positive role models in life, how that relationship works, and draw that influence. I mean, the amount of time we spent researching guns or World War II history, you could spend thinking about how does the whole courting in Western culture or Eastern culture or your science fiction culture work? What are good manners?
Avatar.
Yeah, because those characters are going to have to still do that kind of stuff, even if it's not the main focus. That's the reason why Scott Summers is jokingly a terrible dater, and I don't understand how he's had 3 marriages.
Yeah.
One of which being successful. uh,
And actually, surprisingly, his brother is so much better.
Havoc is a nice person. He's just a nice person.
Yeah.
Unless you get him and Scott together.
And then do they fight? I didn't think they fought that much, did they? Or they've actually.
They fought twice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No.
Wasn't that was always a weird thing that their powers couldn't affect each other? I always thought that was such a weird concept. I don't
No,
know if they
because
still
then
have
it ends up just being a sibling brawl, and it looks.
Yeah.
So yes, it makes sense.
So, yeah. It's funny. It's because the way I did my romance in my comic, it's based on stuff that I've gone through.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to
Nice.
pay special attention now when I read
Deep
it.
insights into Aaron's dating life.
Yeah.
Yes. I think one of my favorite romances in comics is James Rhodes and Tony Stark. War Machine and Iron Man. They've been the best friends since college, and they've just always had each other's back. I just like that. Just like.
You mean Rhodes is always babysat?
That too. That too.
So what is, if there's bromances, what is the 2 best girlfriends? Is that just girlfriends? The 2 best friends that are female. Is there a term for that bromance? Is there another term?
Sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah. A sisterhood.
No, there's not one.
Let's say, well, it was Harley and Poison Ivy until it became an actual romance, and that's been great so far. But the one I can think of right now is probably either Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and probably America Chavez, or Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and America Chavez, especially after West Coast Avengers. They've had that same sort of sisterly relationship where
sisterhood.
Yeah, they handle each other's hot-headedness at times, or they are there to support each other when Kate's questioning her skills as a new leader, when after Clint has to duck, or America has stuff happening with her romantic relationship, and Kate has to be there for her.
Yeah.
Jubilee and X-23.
Yeah. Both with Father Wolverine.
I mean,
that's
I
the
think
reason why Jubilee took
always
so special interest in X-23.
He just picks up strays, as I guess he goes.
Yeah. I think the entire island of them are Skira.
Yes.
I mean,
literally.
That would be like the ultimate sisterhood.
Yeah. This doesn't seem. I'm trying to think of like.
But you're right. You're right. There isn't a lot of examples of sisterhood as opposed to romances.
Yeah, because I'm actually trying to think of some.
Also, the stats on female leads or female heroes in the last 20 years compared to the 50 years before that or whatever. I think as we get more female heroes, I'm hoping to get more positive examples of that.
Harley Quinn and Power Girl.
Oh yeah.
So I was gonna say
that was funny.
Diana and Donna Troy, but they're actually sisters. So
Fire and Ice.
Oh yeah, there was Wasn't that was DC, right?
Yeah.
Trying to think, even in ElfQuest, wasn't there like 2 the female elves that really got along together?
Well, there was Lita and Shen Shen were sisters.
But I thought there were like 2 other of like the
they all got along very well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. My friend keeps giving me crap about the scene, and I think it was a 3rd book.
Yeah, they have
I let him read the story, and that's all he brought up. He's like, "You mean the one with the elves?" I'm like, "Yes, they all love each other. They
have a different view on sexuality."
Yes, and I was like, "Yes." So that's all he could get out of the story. I'm like, "Okay." So he still gives me crap about it. I'm like, whatever. And I didn't even remember the scene. When he told me, I'm like, I don't even remember this. I read back and it was like, what, 2 panels or a panel?
I mean,
And then it
before
was,
in
yeah.
Strangers in Paradise, before, oh gosh, now they're Francine and Kachu finally get together in the end. They've been best friends since high school. I mean,
Do you think it kind of ruined the relationship that they got together? Do you think it would have been better if they did not get together?
no, I like the fact that they're raising their kids together. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I mean that I think that was the ultimate goal in his storyline
Eventually.
anyway.
Yeah.
Because we always knew that Kachu was in love with Francine, and Francine had to get there eventually through, all kinds of other things. But the entire series is based around, just like Supernatural, really, is based around this bond between two people. For in Strangers in Paradise, it's the best friendship of these two girls, and that's the entire series is based around that. And in Supernatural, the entire series is based around the brotherly bond between
Sam and Dean.
Sam and
Yeah.
Dean.
Yeah, it's the thing is, do you think it ever? Because you're talking a lot of the bromances. A lot of the bromances, there's never any. If I remember, there's never any inclination that there's any romantic aspect. With most of the sisters, there's always is there?
Well, I mean, one just recently kind of. Well, I mean, I think it broke. I think it's newer, and it has the record for being the first male same-sex couple on comic was Wiccan and Hulkling. For a while, they were just friends, and then they.
Oh no, because Shatterstar Richter was before that.
Well, it's the first marriage to happen on. Because now they're.
We had what was it, North Star? Well, North Star
was married, but he never got. We never really saw his husband.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because I don't remember who he was even with.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it seems like most of the sister relationships are really good female best friends. You usually have some sort of sexual tension or romantic tension, but a lot of the bromance don't. I kind of wonder why that.
Hello?
Male fragility and heteronormative.
That's what I'm thinking. I was just kind of wondering, like, because I'm thinking, I was thinking of like some of the sisters, and a lot of them, like you said, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. I would think I'm like they're together now. I'm like, okay, well that.
Well, yeah, I think the one that doesn't really show any signs of that because I think one of them is still in a relationship. Yeah, is Magic and Kitty Pryde.
Okay.
Yeah. They've since they became friends after Ileana became Demon Queen.
And I would almost say Jean Grey and Storm. I think for a while there were very close.
Yeah.
I think that's probably because society can accept two women together easier than it can accept two men together. I have no problem with either one.
Yeah.
But comic book readers, I tend to be more of the macho.
Yeah.
Type. So,
but it's just always so weird that so many of the sister things have to eventually, like, well, we hope they get together, but none of the bromances, no one ever thinks of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a while for before Bobby Drake got his boo. They hinted to North Star and Bobby having had crushes on each other for a while.
Okay.
Until they found out North Star had a husband who has been hidden somewhere in Canada.
And I think it's been hinted at in comics too that Tony Stark is so hedonistic that he's bisexual. He doesn't care.
I believe it.
I kind of got that sense too. That when I've read his stuff, that he just like if it has a pulse sort of thing. It didn't really seem.
If it feels good, go for it.
Go for it. Yeah.
Here's one of those couples that nobody really thinks about like at all is Apollo and Midnighter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No one thinks about that.
And they're not, and they're like two badasses.
Yeah.
And I think they started. I think they started out as a couple, if I'm not mistaken. In the Authority, I don't think they came together. I think they were already together when the story started, which was cool. I mean, it was an already established relationship. There was nothing leading up to it. Yeah, I always did like that.
Yeah.
I couldn't get into Mark Miller's run. That got a little like I liked the first story, and then the second authority I read that I'm like, a little too violent, Mark.
Mark Miller's definitely an acquired taste. I love it, but I also
I
love
like Mark Miller. I like there's some stuff I like of his, but there's some stuff where I'm like, wow, I didn't think I had a violence threshold. Mark has crossed that numerous times. Thank you.
I'm
So
also super into like Warhammer 40k, so hyper violence is kind of my jam.
kind
Like,
of your jam, yeah.
yeah, the Wolf Hunter is actually kind of like a weird tone down for me. Being historical spy fiction, not science fiction with guys throwing hammers through each other's heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That
had to
sounds
tone down a
fun.
couple of scenes in Divinity when RA wrote that. It's like, right, shoots him at point blank range. I'm like, can we do this off screen because this is supposed to be kind of a all ages.
Yeah, I do
You know,
manage to get someone's head on like dead center for at least one death a book though so far in the run, so that is kind
Yeah,
of that's hitting my threshold. That's hitting like, okay, I'm satisfied with this. I've had someone die point blank.
oh yeah, there's
I
definitely violence in
Yeah.
Divinity. I just don't want it to be
Yeah.
so violent
Mhm.
that parents are going, oh,
Oh, what's my
dear.
child reading? I don't know, my
Yes.
mother bought me Venom and
I'm trying to keep
anti-venom.
it PG,
Yeah.
but not R.
You're not gonna go the hard R.
No,
Yeah,
not
no.
I'm
hard
trying to
R.
think. Yeah, there's a few comics that have gone. Saga was
Yeah.
one that
Saga,
got
yeah.
me because it was just it was the story is okay, but some of the scenes just I don't mind scenes like that if there are context to the story, but I find it really weird when people just throw in random scenes like that
Mhm.
for no apparent reason because they can. It doesn't have anything to do with the story.
Yeah, that's my issue
Um,
with the Game of Thrones TV shows as opposed to the books. Like the
yeah,
books, they all they like, okay, here's like two sentences mentioning what's happening, and then we're going to expose from this point on. Whereas the TV
right.
show, it's just and hard cut.
And
It's
yeah, it was the TV show that got to me where it's like they put all the money into these gory shots and other stuff, and I'm like, okay, I don't know, I don't really grasp. I think there's a way to show intense violence with having like either off screen or hinting at it,
I think.
and of
Well, yeah.
course, I mean
Well,
most
yeah. The thing is just my BFA talking, but uh, everything has to in some way serve the character or the plot. So I am a fan of hyper
right,
violence, but what is that progressing forward? What change is happening at the top of the page to the bottom of the page?
right,
If it's a moment like where Zemo beheads a random Shield agent in order to cause an emotional change in Cap, that's great.
yeah, yeah,
But if it's
exactly,
just Zemo going around slashing people and we don't have any change happening, then it can be cool eye candy, but you're not developing anything. There's no story happening, and you're essentially just giving your artist a exercise in splatter physics. You're not telling a story.
right. You're not telling the story. Strange enough, the one of the comics that was just brutally violent was that Invincible comic, and I
Mhm.
really did you finish reading the whole thing, Tim?
I've read the first volume. I'm planning on going through and reading it before the Amazon show.
Okay, because if you like hyper violence,
Yeah.
have fun. This gets, but it actually does serve a concept of the story that
Yeah.
but yeah, for a superhero story, oh
Mhm.
my god, yeah, they just they
Yeah.
go through some intense stuff in that,
Yeah.
and because that's the first thing when I heard they were animating it, I'm like, are they gonna keep all that stuff? And apparently from the trailer, I
They
think
better.
they are.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things that has both hyperviolence and a strong strong relationship that doesn't get served anywhere else. I would like to see it progress more, but I get why they didn't. Is a short run on X Force called Sex and Violence that had a relationship between Wolverine and Domino, and is also during Age of Apocalypse Part 2.
is
And
this
so,
after the comics code was lifted?
I think it was. I'm not sure if it was after it was lifted or at the time where Marvel just said we're ignoring it.
yeah,
But it was very. There's a lot of violence happening. There was a lot, but there was such a short, um, essentially dump of comic compared to the year-long story they're telling, that the story got so condensed that the violence, the relationships, the sex, it all served to either expose or develop this greater part of the story because they're telling this part of it. And I think that was a really good showcasing of condensing and having all of your different elements serve the plot.
And do you think regular comics, I mean, normal mainstream comics have become more risque?
I
I
do.
think media has in general.
Yeah, I
We
think they've
just
been
brought
pushing
we
it.
did bring up a book called Sex Criminals, right?
Yeah.
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 So yeah, it's that's one of my I don't know, I can't remember who I was talking this about. It's
I
like
think
sometimes it feels like a little bit like some of the books are written and drawn by people just out of high school, not in a bad way. And then in other words, you can't do this stuff. Now we're out of high school. Now we've graduated to adulthood. So now I get to do everything. And so they just draw violence and sex and just everywhere. And I'm just like, there's no real rhyme or reason. Like, we can draw this now. Like, woohoo. And they just go.
Isn't there a lot of that going on in manga?
No, not strangely enough. Well, there's a certain genre
There's a
of
subgenre.
manga. There's a genre, but yeah, but not. I
Right.
mean, I'm trying to think.
I
Not-
mean, yeah, because
And there's always been underground comics. And
yeah.
I've
Yeah,
done
oh,
a
yeah,
couple.
yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
but in mainstream,
yeah.
I think they're getting much more risque.
Yeah, I think also it's kind of a media and in general thing.
it
Yeah.
is.
But it's almost everything comes in waves. Because if you look at Shakespearean writing as well as the other prose published at the time,
Mhm.
there is a ongoing joke in any theater troupe, which is count how many. That's after 10. Penis jokes are in each Shakespearean play, or how many times they reference other things. And then we enter into the puritanical era after that. The 1800s, we got the. I'm going into welcome to your masterclass in literature. We go into the epistolary becomes popular, and we get a lot of romantic letter style stories. One such, published out of Germany, is about a man's writing unrequited love letters in epistolary format, and the book ends with him essentially shooting himself with his dueling gun, and they're doing historical consensus afterwards. They found that there was actually a rise of suicides in Europe after that book came out, and then we enter into early 90s or 1900s, and the classical value, and then the Greatest Generation timeline where everything became more American Dream and everything like that, and then 70s onward we get the sexual revolution.
Mhm.
80s we get the popularization of drug use. 90s become more the violence and stuff, and now we're seeing that the last 50 decades are now kind of all intertwined in storytelling.
Well, we're
Yeah.
way behind European television in
Yeah.
what they're willing to go much farther than we are. We're
Yeah,
more
they're not as
pure.
uptight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we are much more puritanical
Hmm.
Yeah.
in the
But
U.S.
they're
than
much more. They don't see it as shocking over there.
no, it's
Yeah.
perfectly normal over there.
Now,
They're
well,
like, that's the
strangely enough,
body.
not Germany. Now, Germany will censor a lot of violence.
Yeah.
So when it comes to violence on TV, America is still much more violent than most shows. But as far as like romance and
And what
sexual
they'll
stuff,
Yeah.
what they'll
they're much more. It's
body
like a
parts that
flip.
they'll show.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Yeah.
you still can't see, upper nudity here on American TV, but you see it on European TV all the time.
Yeah. And they don't think it's like just like a guy taking his shirt off.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it's not even phased.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
And
because
if
I
you look at-
remember there's been a few video games that have come out that were violent, and I know a lot of Germany censored or outright banned them. So I know there's certain countries that, and it's weird because America, like the more violent it is, woohoo, free,
Yeah.
So it just goes off. But
Yeah. Well,
John Wick.
we have a,
yeah,
I do love John Wick, but we do have I think it has so much to do with like kind of our gun culture as influence certain things. But if you look at the 1600s, when America and Europe developed separate art identities, we were in the middle of essentially our puritanical culture,
Yeah.
leading into the witch hunts. Whereas in Europe, they had the Renaissance and a whole bunch of full body art and everything leading into the Enlightenment. So it's two separate identities formed, and I think if you historically you're kind of seeing as both get a little more liberated in ways where weird lines are being drawn for each.
Michelangelo and his lovely boys.
Mhm.
Well, even today, modern day, I mean, you're looking at the 70s, you had the Summer of Free Love or whatever, and then you get into the much more conservative 80s. Excuse me, going into the 90s and into the year, 2000. Now the hookup culture I see is a sort of a digital version of the sort of free love movement in a way.
Yeah.
We've taken that online. So it does kind of go up and
Mhm.
down, but it will come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny that but I don't know if they call it free love. But yeah, that stuff I like Tim does, like trends that you see that go through decades where things like no bad, then it comes back, then it goes, and every time it comes back, like the hookup culture is new, and I was like, no, this stuff's been going through human history throughout, the inception of human
Let me
beings.
tell you about the
It's just,
Greeks.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's always interesting to me to look at those macro sort of waves
Yep.
that cut through human history.
Yep.
So
Well, we're out of time, so we're going to have to wrap this up. So I'm going to go through and ask everybody to tell the audience where they can find you. So why don't we start with Aaron?
you mean like my address and stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Your phone number.
And my GPS, GPS
The
unit.
last three on the back of your credit card.
All right.
Yeah. No, you can find me on Facebook under Humphres Illustration. I think that's where my name's spelled up there as an RES at the end. Or my name, Aaron. Instagram at AOH3810. And my webtoons, I have my Goblins, which I hopefully will start posting issue 10. I'm like I'm like 3 pages away from being done with 10, so I'm getting down there. And I'm snowed in just like Tim is.
Yeah. Oh well, we're not
Oh.
snowed in yet, but we lost power all of yesterday.
We
And
never lost
Where
power
are you
here.
at, Tim?
I'm in
He's in Salem.
Salem, Oregon. Yeah. So I'm
He's
like
actually almost an
I'm-
hour away
I'm
from
like
me.
an hour away from Aaron. Yeah.
I say I'm in Memphis and we're about snowed in here.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
you
I am
told me
in
you got hit.
Wisconsin. I'm in Wisconsin and it's 30 below.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you always have snow. I mean, Barb's like, you guys have snow up there? Wow.
Yeah. All right. Tim.
Like Aaron said, I am in Oregon, and I am on all the social medias at TimTKWriter. I am on TikTok at Tim Doesn't TikTok. I am on Twitch at AgroBacon, where I will be going live later tonight. You can also catch me on the Silverline Comics website with the Craft series, and later this year with the release of Wolf Hunter.
All right. How about you, John?
You can find me all over the interwebs. You will find John Martin or Artistic Viking or the Viking Prince Voltan. Somewhere on the internet, you'll find me that way. I will say tomorrow I am doing my little hangout and draw with Drew Moss, which is going to be quite fun. He's another awesome artist. Of course, last week I did it with Peter Clinton.
That guy's a punk.
Did not make it tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get on him about that.
Yeah. So it's going to start at 9:00 Central Time.
Mhm.
So come check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
All right, how about you, Roberta?
Sure, you can find me on Instagram and on Facebook under Roby Conroy. And that's about it for now, because I'm trying to figure out if I should start a DeviantArt page. What do you think?
I have one.
Yeah.
I'm the horrible. You're talking to somebody like I started him and then forget about him. I am horrible at forgetting
Yeah,
things. I put stuff on, and then I'm like, oh wait, that was
I don't update mine very often, but I do try to go in there about every few months and upload a bunch of new stuff. And I use it as a portfolio, an online portfolio, just of my works. So
It looks really inspiring.
Yeah.
Are
you looking for like a portfolio site, Roberta? Like someplace to post your artwork, or
somewhere more fun than, I guess, because I didn't want to use Instagram for that.
Right.
And try to
I'd
figure
say
out the
go
real
for it.
function of
I
Instagram.
think DeviantArt is probably one of the better ones in terms of mixing just the power of tools for hosting your own content as well as the social aspect of it. There's a lot of recommendation.
Bill Reinhold has his portfolio on there, so I think you could put yours on there.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah. Speaking of, you can find me under Barbara Kaelberg on Facebook Instagram, Twitter, and DeviantArt. So, all right. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I hope I did half as well as Roland. He's more personable, but why don't you take us out, Tim? And everybody say, make mine
mine
Silverline.
I got the thing.